How you doing, Bert?
I'm doing good. Congratulations on the Big Ten Tournament Championship.
Oh, thank you, Albert. I appreciate that. I thought you were going to say on my 40-yard dash time. You kind of threw me for a loop there, buddy.
That too. But yeah, I'm happy for you. It was a great run by John Beeline and the guys.
It's unbelievable. He does it every year, it seems, right now,
Yeah.
so it's all good. What's going on with Le'Veon Bell, Albert?
Well, this is going to be an almost impossible long-term deal to do because, you look at the number and it's $14.54 million. And so what the Steelers have to convince him to walk away from now is 1 year at that number and then free agency next year. And we've seen in the past when there have been outsized numbers on the franchise tag, when it becomes very, very difficult for teams to do deals. And so the Steelers are between a rock and a hard place in this one. They're going to have to get really, really creative to get him to consider anything. Obviously, he's shooting for the moon on this one, and he should, because your shelf life at that position is limited. And so, I think we're right back to where we were a year ago, where there's going to be lots of huffing and puffing on both sides. And we'll probably have to check back in on where this one is on July 15th.
So now that figure, is that large because it's his second consecutive franchise tag
Right.
number? Okay.
Right. And it's unique because at running back, a lot of those numbers are based on, guys who are out of the league now. Like Adrian Peterson is one, where the running back number grew in the past and the actual salaries of the position scaled back. That's what makes it so much different than other ones. And so you look at the top running backs in the league, and they're making $9 million, $8.5 million, $8 million a year. And, Le'Veon Bell, rightfully so, should make more than any of them. But based on the number of that franchise tag, what he'll be asking for is just something that would completely blow the market up. And that's what makes the idea of doing a long-term deal off of that tag number so difficult.
So, and the Steelers have no desire to be a trendsetter in that regard, right? That's not.
Well, last year, the deal they put, Rich, the deal they put in front of him last year would have really taken the running back market to another level. I think now what he looks at is, well, how much is Antonio Brown making? How much is Julio Jones making? And by the way, this is something that sort of can affect like a Rob Gronkowski too, where guys that are at different skill positions, whether you're a tight end or you're a running back, become prisoners of their position. And they say to themselves, well, I mean as much to my offense as Julio means to the Atlanta offense or Antonio Brown means to the Pittsburgh offense. So why am I not being rewarded that way? A lot of times those are the things that these players can look at. And the reality of the situation is different positions are just rewarded at different levels. And the franchise tags really do the job of locking in values at those certain positions, which is one of the reasons why we're here where we are with Le'Veon Bell, right back after being in the same spot a year ago.
And Le'Veon saw his teammate carted off, perhaps never to return to a football field. So, he saw football mortality in person. And interestingly enough, Jarvis Landry mentioned Ryan Shazier about not wanting to sign the franchise tag. And yet, where do things stand with him and the Dolphins right now?
I think the Dolphins are going to be aggressive in trying to move him. And whether or not they can get that done, we'll see. My understanding is at this point he's actually accepted the franchise tag. He has yet to actually sign the document yet, but he's accepted the franchise tag, which would be the smart move here, because that number, that $16 million number, is really set for guys like Julio Jones and Antonio Brown, and it's not set for slot receivers. And Jarvis Landry is absolutely one of the best slot receivers in football, one of the most productive guys at his position in all the sport. But it's always been challenging for teams to do deals with slot receivers. We saw this with Victor Cruz a number of years ago because, the franchise tag numbers are set based on outside receivers, not on slot receivers. And I know the Dolphins aren't willing to go anywhere close to $15 or $16 million a year. Problem is they tagged him at that number. And so does it make sense for him to do anything less? I think you would probably say what makes sense for him to do if he's locked in at that number and the Dolphins can't trade him is to just play the year out at $16 million and then hit free agency next year.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. We hit free agency a week from tomorrow. Where do you think the Kirk Cousins of it all lies right now?
I think a lot of it's going to come down to his priorities, and I think, and this is based on talking to people over the course of the last couple of years here. I think a big part of this is going to come down to a team making the commitment to make Kirk their franchise quarterback. He had a front row seat to what that looks like with Robert Griffin his first 3 years in the NFL. And I know he never quite felt that way in Washington. He never felt like I'm their guy and they're going to build around me now. And I think that really affected him. And I think going through the year-to-year thing the last couple of years affected him. And so, look, I don't think that, this is going to become one of those things where he's just going to go to a team that's that's putting the biggest dollar figures in front of him. But I do think the structure of the contract is going to matter. So whether it's the Jets or the Vikings or the Broncos, I think where the guaranteed money is going to matter. And are you guaranteeing me money into the third year? Are you really committing to me committing to make me your franchise quarterback for the next 3 years? That's the sort of thing I think will matter. I think the Jets are fully in on doing that. I think they've got an important weapon in Jeremy Bates. We know what Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan meant to Kirk Cousins, and Jeremy Bates is from that coaching tree, so I think the Jets are there. The Vikings and Broncos have, we can win now as a weapon in this thing. I think whether or not those teams are willing to go to the point where they can say, you're still going to be our starting quarterback in 2020, and this contract here says that, is going to be sort of one of the deciding factors in how this whole thing plays out next week.
Albert, it's crazy to me that we have reached the part of the NFL world where the highest paid quarterback in the league, as we're talking right now, has 7 career starts. The guy, the guy who's about to break the bank in free agency is looking, knowing he's going to break the bank, is looking for a long-term commitment because people are going to break the bank on him because they know he can put up numbers. They have no idea what he can do in January because he's never won a playoff game. This is so bass-ackward. It's insane.
It's
when you
unique,
think about
though.
it.
You know why it's unique, though, Rich? Try to think of a quarterback. Okay, these conditions. A guy who's A, young enough to be the answer for a team that might be going through a rebuild like the Jets. B, is experienced and accomplished enough to be the right kind of quarterback for a win-now team like the Vikings and Broncos. And C, is healthy. I honestly, I'll go back to through 25 years of free agency. Has a player like that ever hit the market before? I don't think so. You can throw Breer's name out there. He was hurt. Peyton Manning was hurt. It just doesn't ever happen, And so if you're the Vikings and you're sitting there and you get the 29th pick in the draft, and you've got a roster loaded with win-now players like Anthony Barr and Harrison Smith and Donnell Hunter and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph and Dalvin Cook. Like, you look at that roster, and you've got the 29th pick in the draft, and, hey, this is the guy who could put us over the top. It's just rare that sort of answer is out there for teams, and Kirk Cousins is. And that's why it's smart for Matt Ryan and Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers to just sit back and wait right now. Drew Brees will probably get signed over the next week. We're going to see where Kirk Cousins is going to go. And those numbers are going to go north towards $30 million a year. And then Ryan and Rodgers and Roethlisberger can sit back, wait, those guys sign, then they can say to their teams, hey, look, I'm a better player than that guy. And they'll be able to push the market even further north.
Last one for you, Albert. Based on what we saw at the Combine and Saquon showing up, Josh Allen throwing 170 yards in the air, Baker Mayfield having definitely a better arm than a lot of people who hadn't seen him play, displayed that. Lamar Jackson out there as well, working out a quarterback. What is going on in the Cleveland front offices right now with the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes about a week away, less than that with the tampering window, if you will. And then what do you think's going on right now in the Cleveland front offices? Walk me through that.
Yeah, my belief is that Cleveland will either take a quarterback first overall or trade the pick to a team that will. And I've heard a lot of people argue that maybe they take Saquon Barkley first overall and then turn around and draft whoever's left at fourth. Here's the point I would make to you on that. If you are comfortable enough to take a quarterback with the fourth overall pick, which means you are necessarily tying your job security to the guy, it makes no sense not to take him first overall. The position's too important. If you get it right, the guy gives you stability for 10 to 15 years. If you feel comfortable enough to tie your livelihood to a guy with the 4th overall pick, then you don't mess around. You don't get cute. You just take the guy first overall. Now, if they don't think any of these guys are that guy, then you don't take the guy first or 4th. And I know they're still going through the process. I've talked to Dorsey about this. He's looked at these quarterbacks going back to before he had the job. So, he's got an idea on each of them and where he's at on each of them. But if they believe one of these guys is the guy to build around for the next 10 or 15 years, you do not mess around. I don't care how good Saquon Barkley or Quentin Nelson or Bradley Chubb are. You just take the guy first overall.
Albert, great chat. We'll chat down the line. No question about it as news pops.
All right, you got it, Rich.
Take care, brother. At Albert Breer on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.